And where did you start your radio career?
In June of 1968, I graduated high school from Sacramento High, and in August I went to work for KZAP.
You were the first one to work for KZAP, right? Weren't you the
I
one
was
who
the third.
signed
I
the
was the
station?
third hire. Well, I worked at the station before it was KZAP. I worked at the. I can never remember the call letters.
KXRQ.
Well, that's what I think it is, KXRQ. And they were pop in the daytime and jazz at night. And when I was a junior in high school, I had an all-night jazz show. I worked 2 to 6 a, playing jazz. And then when the FCC ordered the owner to sell the station because he was doing such a poor job of running it. And so I said, what's going to happen? He goes, well, these people bought the station and they're going to, you know, maybe go rock and roll. I said, give me their phone number. So I called, and I was hired as the first music director and one of the original 5 air staff, and then we took it from there.
You know, you told me an exciting story earlier today about how you met Jimi Hendrix.
Mm.
Was that a common thing for rock stars to come by the station at KZAP back then?
Well, Jimmy didn't come to the station, but when I was at KXRQ, I approached Bill Graham because I had a Sunday morning blues show and I was playing Paul Butterfield and some other things, and then I had the all-night jazz show. And I came to him and I said, you know, I'm playing this music and I'm promoting your shows. I'm mentioning your shows, and why don't you put me on the guest list? So he put me on the guest list, which was called the Permanent Come List. It meant you can come anytime. And so I did. I went every Friday night. I went to the Fillmore in '67, and then by the time KZAP came on, I was on the KZAP guest list. The way I met Jimmy was the first time he played the Fillmore, opening night, he was on a bill with Gabor Szabo, the jazz guitar player. I think he's Austrian or something.
Maybe Hungarian. I'm thinking
Hungarian, yes, Hungarian. And Jefferson Airplane. And of course, in those days, each band did 2 sets, ABC, ABC. And Jimmy opened the show, and they followed through, and he did his second set. And then we left after his second set, because I was still in high school, and Jimmy and Chaz Chandler, his manager, were sitting on the steps of the Fillmore. And I said, what are you guys doing? Oh, waiting to catch a bus, you know. And I talked to Jimmy, and he was such a sweet, humble, open guy. Did you like the show? I said, did I like the show? You were unbelievable, unbelievable. And I come to find out, that was Thursday night, and they still had Friday, Saturday, Sunday to go. And Thursday night, the airplane, and Gabor says, you can close the shows. So as I understand it, the only time the Jimi Hendrix Experience ever opened a show was that night at the Fillmore, original Fillmore.
And I bet you paid $3, right? That was the
I
cost.
was on the guest list.
Oh!
Hey,
hey, you didn't have to fork out the big $3, huh?
And I got a free apple when I came in. And then on February 8th, 1968, a local group of guys produced Jimi Hendrix at Sac State in the men's gym. And I went out with them. I knew them, so I went out with them and picked up Jimmy at the airport and hung out backstage. And he was just a sweet guy. We talked for about 2 or 3 hours before the show.
What did you guys talk about?
You know, in those days, I talk a lot about blues musicians. Because all the young rock guys were really into the blues, and we talk a lot about blues musicians. The funny thing about it, no security, none whatsoever. And refreshments backstage were 2 12-packs of Budweiser. Not even on ice, just plopped on a bench. We were in the men's locker room with the benches, you know, and the lockers. Here's your, you know, here's something, refreshments. And it was just 2 12-packs of Bud, not even kept iced. You know, so we drank some beers and we sat there and talked. But by that time, I'd gotten to know Muddy Waters. I'd worked with him and was just really into the blues. I mean, was able to talk about the blues, and so these guys like talking about the blues.
Did you get to meet a lot of rock stars of that era?
I did. You know, I just had this passion from being. I started collecting records when I was 9 years old, and I just had this passion. I used to call up Croy disc jockeys, you know, and talk to them, and I want to be in radio and all that stuff in the early '60s. And so you couldn't hold me back. I was a force to be reckoned with. So I would go to the Fillmore, and the great things about the early days of the Fillmore, the artists would just come out into the audience and go upstairs to the cafeteria or the cafe and have a bite, you know. I bought Howlin' Wolf a hamburger one night for dinner, you know. I get some for free. I said, it would be such an honor for me to buy you a hamburger. Okay, you know. So I met a lot of artists, Chuck Berry and you know, James Cotton, so many blues guys, and then the rock people too. You know, Janice would be there when she's not even working, not playing, and just in the audience and go up and say hello and stuff.
So the Fillmore was your hang. You'd go there a lot.
I went every Friday night, and yeah, saw many great shows, and my lifetime commitment was to see everybody live. I want to see everybody that was important, everyone that's supposed to be good, everyone that I liked, everyone I heard that was good in live, and I just pursued that, you know, whether I paid or free. I mean, in the early days, in the mid-'60s, I would go to all the rock shows at the auditorium, buying tickets, but they were like $3, $4, $5. All the soul shows. Saw James Brown and the Famous Flames with the whole review several times, 3, 4 times.
Didn't I hear you say on KZAP today that you went to the Beatles' final concert in '66?
Yes, at Candlestick Park, their final public performance. And I was there, and it was a unique experience because the ballroom scene hadn't started yet. And on the ad, I played a commercial for the show, and they talked about, you know, plenty of seats, everyone can, you know, get in, great sight lines, you know, you can see them well, and they'll have great sound. Well, the sound was like for a 500-seat auditorium.
Right.
So they're set up on second base. We're all in the, you know, in the bleachers, and they got this raggedy little sound system. I mean, you could hear them, you know, but it was the good sound systems came in after the ballroom scene started. But it was great to see them. It was fun. The Ronettes opened the show, and I love the Ronettes. And so yeah, it was great to see the Beatles live. I'm glad I did. That, you know, I tried to see everybody, and I saw most everybody.
And if you went to the Fillmore in those days, you pretty much did, if you did every week, because as I remember, there was a time when I think they had like 2 sets of acts every week. I think it was like, you know, Tuesday through Thursday,
Yes.
or something like that, or Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And they would play for you know, 3 nights straight. There were always
Grateful Dead shows.
yeah, there were always 3 you know, 3 bands at least.
Yes.
And just a heck of a deal that
I
you
think
don't
that
see anymore.
I think that came in '68, somewhere in '68. '67, the Summer of Love. You know, his format, Bill's format was always 3 bands, and they all did 2 sets. And he would run 3, usually 3, maybe 4 nights a week. And then at some point it was so big that he would do split weeks. And so yeah, you'd have 2 lineups. One would play Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the other would play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it was the same thing. Each band played 2 sets. Oh, and also what was great is that Bill knew music, and he had great taste in booking opening acts. And he was able to buy the headliners and book his own opening acts and his own middle acts. But by about '69, the booking agents took over. Well, if you want the headliner, you have to take our opening acts, you know.
So you have the Monkees if you want Hendrix, right?
Well, that's another story, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The Monkees wanted Hendrix because they were hip.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they're square, but they were hip. And they wanted Hendrix on that tour. And they got him for a while, and then finally the promoters, I think, was the one that said, this ain't working. You know. It was like the first time I saw The Who was at the Memorial Auditorium, opening act for Herman's Hermits.
Really?
So I went to the show. They did 2 shows. There was a Sunday evening or afternoon and evening show, and the audience was, you know, 2,000 10-year-old girls and their mothers, and 6 teenage boys. You know, and The Who came out and they had like a 20-minute set. They came out and they did the smoke bombs and smashed their equipment and off, you know, and then Henry the Eighth I am, you know. And when The Who was performing, the entire audience was like, they're sitting there with their mouths open.
Right. Well, Jeff and Ed, thank you very much for reflecting on KZAP.
Yes. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks.